Hey guys, and welcome to another great movie review. Today, this episode is going to be about The Darkness, starring one of America's greatest actors, Kevin Bacon. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Now, if you're into horror movies, this is actually a fairly decent one. It's not the best in the world, and I'll admit it is a little slow. It's slow starting off for one, and it's a very slow build up, And if I'm gonna be honest with myself, it's also a little anticlimactic. More on that later. Basically, the film starts off with two families who are going camping, and one family has one child, and the main family has two children, an older daughter and a younger son, who we find out has autism. And anyway, so the son, all the children, they decide, hey, let's go, explore these rocks over here because they're camping at the Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon, it kind of threw me off a little bit, but I'm like, hey, let's roll with it. So they're here exploring the rocks. They're having fun, doing what kids do, and just kind of hiking up the rocks, and kind of made me want to go to the Grand Canyon, I'll admit. Anyway, we see that the boy, again, he has autism. We don't quite get that at first, but if you are one of those people who can automatically recognize the signs of autism, then hey, more power to you. I'll be honest with myself. I kind of had my suspicions when I saw the way he was acting, kind of distant, kind of staring off into space. Not really there. He was there, but not really there at the same time. If you get what I mean. For those of you who can automatically see the signs of autism, hey, more power to you. Again, I'll be honest. I had my suspicions, but didn't say, oh, he has autism right away. Anyway, we see that his older sister and the older boy from the other family are talking, and they're just having a little friendly talk, and they're talking about him, about the younger brother. And his older sister is saying how he's not scared, how he's different and that's a good thing because he's not scared of anything as the rest of the kids are. And it's like, oh, cool, fearless kid, awesome, And so the older boy from the other family tries to scare the younger boy by telling him a spooky ghost story, He goes on to tell him how in the Grand Canyon that there are ancient spirits that watch over the Grand Canyon, and that if anyone disturbs them, they'll be cursed. That kind of thing. And so the younger boy, hearing this is interested. And he's like, really? And again, the older boy tries to scare him and is like, yeah, and they're right behind you. Of course, younger boy doesn't look. So obviously he wasn't scared. The older boy says, yeah, I'm just messing with you, you're a cool little guy. Here, I'm seeing you've been looking at my watch. You can have it. And he gives him his watch. Nice little gesture. Anyway, they spot a lookout, and so the older boy and the older girl decide, hey, let's go to that lookout. It might be, an older site that someone might have used, back in the day for something. Who knows? Now, the younger boy's looking at the watch, and he doesn't want to go. He's intrigued by the watch, the design of it, and it's a very nice watch, I'll admit. Anyway, so the older boy and the older girl, they tell him, okay, we'll just stay there, and they go to the lookout. Anyway, after a little bit, we see that the younger boy accidentally drops the watch onto the ground, and he kind of jumps up from where he's sitting. He's sitting on a rock, and instead of just simply standing up, he kind of pushes himself up and jumps up. And when he does that, it turns out that the ground isn't fully there, and he falls to the ground. which is kind of awkward considering the fact that they were all just walking on that one area. So you would think that with the combined weight of all those three people, not saying they're heavy set because they weren't, but that older boy had to be at least 200 pounds. If again, older guy, about 5'8", come on. Anyway, I just found that kind of weird. Anyway, so the younger boy falls through the floor into this kind of underground cave, and he starts crawling through, figuring out where this goes, and he comes upon an even bigger underground cave. I guess what he was crawling through was a space for other people to crawl through. Looked like I guess it was man-made, but in older days, ancient times, I guess you can say. So what I'm thinking is that this place is, again, an underground cave that they dug a tunnel and people, would crawl. Again, people would crawl through to get to this bigger cave. And anyway, he gets into this cave, and we see he kind of looks around a little bit, and then he looks up at this, at the wall right in front of him, and we see these 5 figures drawn onto the wall in what looks like charcoal. Again, they're cave drawings, they're ancient. Not really ancient, but they're cave drawings. Anyway, and he happens to look kind of down, and there's a kind of a pile of dirt there, a pillar of dirt, if you will, that someone made, and there's happens to be 5 rocks on the pillar of dirt, all with some kind of strange shapes on them. And you'll find out what the shapes are. You find out what the shapes are later, if you don't automatically see them and think, oh, hey, this is this. Anyway, well, in stereotypical fashion, we can guess that these rocks have something to do with an ancient spirit, like the older boy was telling him. And so if you go see the movie, you'll think, hey, bad idea, right? Of course, nobody listens in horror movies, so the boy takes them. He takes the rocks because they look interesting. Anyway, the scene cuts to his mom, another one of the main characters, the mother of the family of the boy with autism and his older sister, and she's coming around the rocks, she's taking pictures, and very good pictures, I might add. And who wouldn't want to take pictures of the Grand Canyon, right? Anyway, she's taking pictures, and she happens to come around and look down, and she sees her husband with the wife of the other family. Not sexually. When I say that, I don't mean that that she sees them having, intercourse, or she doesn't, she catches them making out, anything like that. No. But you do see them walking together, and the other lady's husband comes around, and you hear him ask, "Hey, where have you guys been?" So, all those clues together kind of gives you the image of, hey, they snuck off to, do the deed, and now they're going back to the site, to the campsite, whatever. Anyway, and you kind of see this look on her face, like, gives you the impression that he's done this before. And so, after that, the scene cuts back to the little boy who apparently found a way out of the cave, and he's just walking around, and he runs into them, and they're like, "Oh, hey, hey, there he is," and everybody packs up, and they go their separate ways. You see the 2 cars going to the interstate, and one car goes this way, the other car goes this way. And so the family goes back to their home after, a decent vacation, and we find out that the husband, played by Kevin Bacon, is a architect of sorts. I want to say he's an architect. Because from the clues I got, blueprints of buildings, stuff like that, looks like an art and seems like an architect to me. Anyway, again, this movie is slow building, so I won't go ahead and go into every single detail. But again, they come back, they come back home, and the wife starts smelling weird things, around the house. So hey, ooh, spooky ghost, weird smells. Anyway, the boy is keeping the rocks. Turns out the boy is keeping the rocks in his backpack, and you find that out because he starts acting, in their words, more aggressive than usual, especially when it comes to his backpack, because they wake up and everyone's getting ready for the day, and he has his backpack on the table, and the dad says, "Hey, remember, no bags on the table," and he reaches to go to the bag, and the boy kind of growls at him, like, ah, gets mad at him. And she's like, "Oh, honey, that's kind of his new thing." And he says, "Okay, I'm sorry, no one's gonna touch your bag." Anyway, the daughter goes to school. She goes to a private school, and the mom and the boy spend the day together. They're having fun, playing their own little game of hide and seek, if you will. And it's nice. It's very nice, It's nice to see family connecting to each other, Anyway, we see the mom start to hear like weird noises coming from the attic, something like that. Again, is again, stereotypical horror film things. By this point, anyway. So she goes to the attic, and I will admit I kind of jumped a little bit at this part. Usually I don't, but I will admit I did, because it really was so unexpected. She goes up to the attic, and she tries turning on the light. Light doesn't turn on. Stereotypical horror movie. Anyway, she hears something coming from the dollhouse. Now, this whole time you can see the background. You can see the background almost clearly, and you can tell that nobody else has come up. Then again, he could have, who comes up? I'll tell you who comes up here in a minute, but he could have come up, when she was looking at the thing. But then again, you can see the background, so you would have seen him come up. Anyway, I'll explain myself here in a minute. Then she turns around real quick because she thinks she hears something else, and then she turns back to the dollhouse, and her son's there. And she's like, "Oh my god." And it's like, and I will admit I jumped because I wasn't expecting to see him. I really wasn't. But the reason that threw me off. But also, again, the plot hole that I saw there was, wait, you mean to tell me when she turned back around she didn't see him? She didn't hear him come up. Not only that, how did he get around her? It didn't look that big. It didn't look that big of an attic, for one. Then again, it was dark. I couldn't see everything. Who knows? It might have been bigger than what we saw. But if you go see the movie, you'll see it doesn't look like that big of an attic, and it doesn't look like there was a way for him to get around her. Anyway, she goes, "Come on, let's go back downstairs," and all of a sudden the light bulb explodes. Anyway, time goes on, and the little boy starts talking to Jenny, and it's another plot hole, to be honest with you. I think I might have solved it, and I'll explain it later, but at first I didn't get why he was talking to somebody named Jenny. And again, I'll explain later. Anyway, the movie basically goes about them trying to go about their normal lives, but the entire time they're trying to go about their normal lives, it seems like something is affecting the family. Everybody's more aggravated, everybody's more uptight, everybody's just more angry for some reason, with each other, with everything else. So, and it seems like something's affecting them. We find out that the smell in the house is coming from the daughter. Turns out that she's bulimic, and she eats something and she throws it up, and she keeps the jars or containers of throw up underneath her bed. And I know that's gross to many of you out there. I know you might not want to hear that. Not saying that the condition itself is gross. It is a very serious condition, and I want to go ahead and take a quick moment to say that if you are having to be dealing with that there is people out there who you can talk to, and that you do not need to feel ashamed for anything. Moving on, I will go ahead and say that again, in this scene, we see the daughter again bulimic. She eats something, but then she throws it right up. She throws up into a container, and then she closes the container. But then she hears, something. Turns out her door was open, and her mom was watching her. And out of nowhere, the daughter, instead of what you would expect to be breaking down and crying and again, what you would imagine what would happen doesn't happen. The daughter gets mad and she screams, "I hate you," and she tries basically attacking her mom, kind of. And but by this point, the dad has come home from work, and it's fairly late at night. He works late. Anyway, he stops the fight and locks the girl out of her room while her mom talk in their room, and they check her into a hospital. Not fully, but they do take her to go see a doctor, and perhaps a therapist even. I didn't see a therapist, so I'm just speculating. Anyway, moving on. As I said before, we see the family get angrier and angrier, and more and more weird things are happening. And by this point, we actually get to see, some fairly supernatural things happen around the house, such as black handprints are starting to, appear in random places, and it's, I'm guessing it's like charcoal, because when the older daughter goes to feel her bed sheet where the handprints are, and she thinks her little brother did it, she seems like it feels gritty, like it's almost again like charcoal or black chalk, if that exists, Anyway, so we see those handprints, and then it's like they watch the sheets, whatever, no more handprints for a little bit. Anyway, but we do see the little boy more and more talking to Jenny and these other people. And then we see the cause of the wife's suspicion at the very beginning of the movie, and it turns out that if you hadn't guessed it before, if you did guess it before, hey, you're right. If not, you find out that turns out he kind of did have an affair, and so obviously she doesn't trust him anymore with women. Anyway, we see him get this new assistant, which is a very cute looking assistant, stereotypical, she's cute but I'm married situation, kind of deal. Anyway, we see the family get more and more aggressive again as time goes on, and it's finally gotten to the point where the little boy has actually set fire to part of the house, and so it's like part of his wall in his room is just burnt, and they finally get worried about him, and Kevin Bacon playing the dad goes to confront him about it, and he's understandably upset, but it seems like he might yell at the boy, might need to spank the boy, stuff like that. So the boy goes over to his clubhouse and kind of locks himself in there, and Kevin Bacon's telling him, you come down here right now, and the mom says, stop yelling at him, stop, you probably didn't mean it. And she's like, you're scaring me, and he turns to her and says, he's scaring me. And so now, finally, you see the point of there's something going on, and the family starts to catch on that there's something going on. Anyway, we also find out that the wife is a recovering alcoholic. Now, when I say recovering alcoholic, I mean that she is sober and that she doesn't drink, tries not to drink alcohol at all. Anyway, we find out that they go to. We find this out because at the very beginning of the movie, when a man offers them champagne, and she's like, "I'll just have a Coke," and then when she's going grocery shopping, she passes the store, the aisle with the wine and such, and the vodka and all the stuff like that. And I will say that grocery store is shown a lot in the movie. It is literally ridiculous how many times that family has to go for food, which is exactly why I say, this. Well, not exactly why I say, but which is why I say that this movie is very slow building. I mean, I didn't expect this movie to be, a 30-minute movie, but I also didn't expect it to take as long as it did, to be honest with you. Anyway, we see the wife finally break down and buy 2 bottles of vodka. And she kind of loses her son for a little bit, but then he's there by the cart holding toys because he wants toys. Anyway, the husband and the wife have a dinner date with his boss and his wife. And so they go, and she brings up the fact that there's something, that she thinks there might be something going on with their house, and stuff like that. And then the wife, the boss's wife, starts talking about somebody that they talked to that helped them with their son who was sick, and no doctors could figure out what was wrong with him. And then she told them to do certain things, and they did, and hey, he got better. So they tell them. So she tells that wife, contact her. She'll help you out. So we finally get the gist of, hey, here's the supernatural expert that comes into play. Anyway, afterwards we see a fight between between Kevin Bacon and his wife, because he feels like, in his words, she couldn't keep her mouth shut about the stuff that's going on in her home. Those words. Again, those were his words. Basically, he feels embarrassed, and she kind of gets upset. Obviously. And the next thing we see is the little boy going to stay with his grandma for the day while the mom goes to do stuff, and his grandma's watching him, and she barely watches him for, I'm guessing, an hour, and stuff starts to happen. The water's turning on by itself. The cat doesn't want to play with the boy, like the cat usually does, I guess, and the boy goes to chase the cat, and his grandma tells him, I wouldn't touch the cat, or you might get scratched. And then the grandma happens to turn around, and she sees a snake. And I'm not just talking about, little itty bitty garden snake. No, I'm talking about like a rattlesnake. Like, this thing was hissing, and its rattle was going, and she, understandably gets freaked out. And so, but as that's happening, the door to the other room closes, and you hear the cat hissing and growling, and she goes to the other room, and then you don't see what happens, but you can tell it's kind of horrible by her screaming. She's admitted to the hospital. Turns out that the little boy was trying to kill the cat. And, of course, the dad says, no, that's not possible. He wouldn't do something like that. Well, they finally call the specialist after the wife has searched things on the internet like, oh, you know, oh, this stuff and this stuff, ancient ruins, stuff like that. Basically, Native American spirits, and that's one of the things I found interesting about this movie. More on that later. She finds this stuff out, and she sends the link to her husband. He watches it. They find that stuff out. And after so much stuff happens, and after seeing weird animals, snakes, a coyote, a wolf, after the neighbor's dog coming and biting their daughter, and the dog having to be taken to the pound, you know, they finally call the specialist, and the specialist comes, and she's Spanish speaking, as is her daughter that she brings, and her daughter's translating because her daughter obviously speaks English. And so they go through the process of cleaning the house, and they use certain objects to clean said house. They go through, and the entire time the spirits are fighting them and fighting them and fighting them, and even at one point shocking the metal rods that the woman is using to track them down. Don't ask me how. To be honest with you, I don't know. I will say right now, I am a very spiritual person. I do believe in that stuff, but I am not experienced in it. Anyway, so she's tracking down the spirits, and she is using metal rods. And again, she at one point they shock her, or they actually heat the rods to the point where they burn her hands, and so she has to drop them. They finally clean the house except for one room, and that is the boy's room, and that is the room where, of course, he tried to burn, so he started the fire. Well, it turns out that burnt wall is basically a portal, and they used it to come into the world, or to start trying to come into the world. We find out that the spirits are ancient spirits ancient native spirits, that natives would use to use the stones that we saw in the movie to communicate with them, and those spirits would basically be kept at bay by those stones, by keeping them in their own dimension. And if they were free, if the stones were moved, and if the spirits were set free, they would come forth to basically destroy the world. And again, it's stereotypical per se, spirits coming into the world, but at the same time, again, it's really interesting. And more on that later. Anyway, we see, dark hands coming out the portal, and we see handprints everywhere, and we see this small boy who's going to be this first sacrifice going already in the other world, and his dad got into the room, but then the room is locked and nobody can get in. Nobody else can get in. The dad happens to go through the portal, and they're in the same cave that they were in, but at the same time, that cave is in a different dimension, if that makes sense. I could apply science to it, but I won't. Anyway, we see the dad try to put the stones back, because that's the way you beat them, is you put the stones back into their place, but they have to be put there by someone who has no fear. So the dad tries to put the stones back, and one of the spirits, literally just raises his finger and sends him flying. And so he says, "Take me instead." And he tells his son, just go, get out of here. Go back home. Go back to the portal. Son is about to go, and they're about to go and take him and kill him. And the son picks up the stone and says, "Dad, I'm not afraid." And he puts the first stone back, and he starts putting the stones back, and they're trying to, stop him, but they can't, and the spirits are trying to stop him, but they can't. And finally, all that's left is one spirit, and it's the wolf spirit. and the spirit again is trying to fight them. The spirit even knocks the boy down at one point in time, and the boy drops the rock, and the spirit goes to stab the dad, but the boy gets up in time and puts the rock back, and they save the world, and they get back through the portal just in time, and the wall is normal, no burn mark, no nothing. And so the house is officially cleaned, and the spirits are back in the other dimension, trapped in the other dimension where they can't hurt anybody else. Anyway, after that, everything goes back to normal. Everybody, all that anger and everybody that we saw that you see that build up through the movie, it's no longer, nobody has resentment toward each other, nothing like that. And they, they go about their lives, and that's basically how the movie ends. Is a happy ending. They go on, they go on about their lives. Now, again, this movie was stereotypical in a sense, and again, it was a very slow building. I didn't get bored per se, but at one point in time, I was just like, I was literally just there. I went there to watch the movie because I thought it would be really interesting, and don't get me wrong, it was interesting, but it wasn't so interesting that I wasn't fully immersed in the movie. I was there. I was just there, sitting down, watching it. And not to say that that's a bad thing, but again, this movie could have been a little better. I will say that the acting was great. I will admit I do not know if the boy who plays the younger son, if he actually has autism or if he just plays like he has autism. I really don't know, but the acting was superb. The acting was actually one of the great things that I liked. The effects, the special effects, because during the cleaning of the house, you see lightning. You see lightning on the ceiling, dark clouds, like a storm coming in, and it looked good. The effects were good. The animals were actually very good. I believe those were real animals. I really do. Real dog, real wolf, real snake, real crow. If you haven't gotten it by now, the spirits, I forgot to mention, I'm sorry, but the spirits are based on 5 animals. They're based on the coyote, the wolf, the snake, the crow, and the buffalo. Again, all animals that we know that Native Americans connect to, in a sense. Anyway, we see these animals, and again, bam, it feels like the dog really bit the girl. It feels like the coyote really jumped out of the treehouse at Kevin Bacon. It really feels like the snake, was there. And I do believe those were real animals. If not, hey, let me know. Anyway, the only problem I had with this movie was that it was a little slow. Other than that, the acting was actually fairly good. The effects were fairly good. The plot line, while it was stereotypical, was fairly good. I enjoyed the plot line, and to be honest, it was kind of different from regular horror movies. And the reason I say that is because in regular horror movies, you see, of course we hear of the spirits and the demons possessing people's bodies. We hear and see them, possessing people's bodies, throwing stuff around the house, and we have that movie coming out this Friday, The Conjuring 2, another true tale. And again, this movie wasn't true, but The Conjuring 2 is another true story based on Ed and Lorraine Warren, which I will see, by the way, and this coming Friday, and I will be doing a movie review on that one, so stay tuned. Anyway, moving on, we see those kinds of movies, whether they're based on true events or not, but we see those kinds of spirits, and then we see these kinds of spirits, and there's a difference. There really is. Because again, in regular horror movies, you see the spirits possessing people, like little children, and you see, or following little children, and you see them, hurting the family. But then you see these spirits in this movie, and they're not possessing. Now, I would say that they are. The similarities are that they are affecting that they both affect the families, in a way. Anger, resentment, sadness. And so in that sense, they were similar. But in that, I feel like it was different. These were spirits that that not many people have heard of. And to be honest, I was really thinking about researching this and seeing if the spirits that they were talking about were actually true. And who knows, they might be. Because as we all know, this world is filled with many different cultures, many different religions. And, it's astounding to learn about other people's beliefs, in my opinion. I like to learn about other people's beliefs. I really do. And in this sense, it actually helped me kind of, get more in touch with other people. Again, I kind of wanted to see if those spirits were based on actual native mythology, if you will. And I kind of wanted to research it. Who knows? I might do a video. In my next video, I might inform you guys on that. Anyway, if I had to rate this movie on a scale of 1 to 10, I would give it a 6 out of 10. The reason I would give it a 6 out of 10 is the slowness. Everything else, perfectly fine. As a matter of fact, also, I forgot to bring up the fact of the real world issues that they presented in the movie. And they were actually brought up really well. The struggle of alcoholism, the struggle of adultery, again, the dad, committing adultery and having an affair. The struggles with certain diseases, such as bulimia, and also having an autistic child. Not saying that I'm not saying that everybody struggles with an autistic child, and I'm not saying it's the hardest thing in the world. I'm not trying to put anyone down, but I will say kudos to those parents who keep pushing forward and who keep doing their best to raise their child, and y'all are doing a great job. But again, this movie, although a little bit, I believe it focuses a little too much on the supernatural aspect, it does bring in the real world issues. And I think that's something that not many horror movies actually bring in today, Again, with all the Paranormal Activity movies, with the Conjuring movies, Insidious movies, yes, they have, the horror effect of spirits, affecting people. But we don't really get to see real life scenarios, we don't really get to hear about real world problems that much in movies nowadays. I think the closest that we got was in the first Conjuring movie, when the wife was, possessed by the spirit, was possessed by the demon, and we see the flashbacks, and we see the, her, wanting to, loving her family, but feeling like she was drifting apart all this time from her family, and not feeling the same. And I think that's the closest we ever got. Besides this, and again, I think this movie did a really good job on that. I really do. It made me really evaluate, our regular day lives, and really made me evaluate how many people actually, go through these situations. And then to make the struggle of, a paranormal, other spirits, affecting your family on top of all that, and it. So this movie really brings out this, that point fairly, very well. And again, I would rate this movie a 6 out of 10. It wasn't the best movie, but it wasn't the worst. All in all, it was a fairly good movie. If you like horror movies, you might like this one. I'm not saying you have to go see it, but hey, give something new a shot. You might like it. All in all, fairly good movie. Fairly good movie. And I do recommend it. So 6 out of 10. Alrighty, and as I said before, I will go ahead and do my next video on Conjuring 2. So keep a lookout for that one probably next week. Until then, don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know what you think in the comments. See you next time.